Mr. Vice President, how did you lose your faith?
Well, Jesse, it's an interesting question, but I think really it started with the fact that I wasn't properly formed in my faith. I grew up, I went to church off and on. My grandmother who raised me, she was a person who prayed. She was a person of very deep faith, but I was never actually that rooted in any particular church, in any particular community of members. I remember a pastor, a guy who actually did a lot of ministry in prisons. He told me that one of the things he told the prisoners that he worked with is, you show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Yeah, I unfortunately had a lot of friends who were not people of faith. I had a lot of people who just did not, I think, properly support me in my own faith journey. And so I kind of just lost it. There wasn't any particular moment. It's not like I had this particular fissure with my own Christian faith. But I think for a lot of kids, they look at their faith. They maybe weren't properly formed. They didn't have a great church community when they were growing up. And then they get to the Marine Corps, they get to military, they get to college, and they realize their faith just doesn't mean that much to them. And so it's easy to discard. And that was certainly the case for me. It didn't mean that much to me. And so it was easy to discard. And in a lot of ways, the story of this book is how I realized how powerful and important that faith could be. So I came back to it. But it was a long and winding road, as they say.
What exactly propelled you back to faith?
Well, Jesse, I think a big part of it is that, I was doing very well. I was about to have, Usha and I were about to have our first baby. I was professionally very successful. I was making a lot of money. I had gone to all the right schools. And I realized that American elite culture was forming me to be kind of a bad person. It was forming me to be the kind of person who focused way too much on what kind of school I went to, on how much money I made, on what kind of job I'd made. I was way too focused on prestige and not enough on the things that mattered. And as I married this girl who I'd fallen in love with, and I became a father for the first time, I was thinking about much more important things, like how to be a good person, how to be virtuous, how to be a good and supportive husband, how to raise this son to be a good man himself. And the more that I thought about these bigger, more important questions, the more that drew me back to my faith. And I eventually realized, Jesse, I developed as a guy who went to Yale Law School and made a lot of money. I developed a good vocabulary for what was the successful versus not successful. But I had not developed a great vocabulary for what made a person good versus not good. And the more that I started to sort of search for that, the more that I realized that, what I'm really looking for is a good old-fashioned faith foundation, something that I once had but discarded. And maybe if I'm so hungry for that, I should discard the elite values that I acquired when I was doing well in the professional world, and I should go back to that faith that my grandmother had formed me in, that it didn't take, but it did at least have enough of a seed within me to regrow as I grew older.
And you converted to Catholicism. Why?
It's interesting. I think every Christian that I know, and whether they're Protestant or Catholic, they have their own particular faith journey and story. For me, what attracted me to Catholicism was there was this sense of rootedness in it. It seemed like the world was changing so fast. You go on social media and you scroll and everything is different, and there are a whole host of new technologies and ways of communicating. It just felt, this is back in 2015, 2016, it felt like the world was changing so fast. And what I loved about Catholicism is that you had this beautiful ancient church. And you had all of these traditions that were very firmly rooted, some of which went back literally thousands of years. And I just really loved that sense of tradition. And I also think, Jesse, it's possible sometimes to think too much about this stuff. The reality is that it was very felt for me, that when I went to a Catholic church, I felt at home. A lot of the Christians that I knew, I mentioned I was sort of on this journey of how to be a good husband, how to be a good father. A lot of the Christians, like my uncle, who were really good husbands, really good fathers, these were people who had been formed in the Catholic Church. And so after a lot of soul searching, that's just what felt like home to me. And, it's interesting because there are so many Catholics I know who are great Christians. There's so many Protestants I know who are great Christians. And I think one of the things that is so great about the American church, Catholics and Protestants, is that there's this real dynamism that comes from Catholics and Protestants debating some of these issues and figuring out these issues together. And certainly has been true for me that while I made my home in the Catholic Church, some of my best friends and some of the most influential people I've met in the church have been Protestants. So I think that's going to continue to be true. But I love that the American church, I think, borrows from both the Catholic and the Protestants. And I think we're all learning a lot about God in the process, and that's the whole point.
Well, I'm Protestant, and my wife is kind of trying to get me to convert to Catholicism. I'm not there yet. Maybe I'll get there one day. We'll see how it plays out.
We'll talk, Jesse. We'll talk.
Right. But Usha is Hindu, and you are Christian. How do you raise your children?
Yeah, so we decided to raise our kids Christian, and so 2 of our 3 kids have been baptized, and this is one of the things that I take very much from my Protestant formation is usually kids in the Catholic tradition get baptized very young. Mm-hmm. Protestants tend to get baptized very old, and so the kind of compromise that Usha and I settled on is we're going to raise our kids Catholic. We're going to take them to Catholic church every Sunday, but we're going to let them decide when they ultimately want to be baptized, and so that's what we've done with our family, and we'll keep on doing it. You know, Usha's own faith tradition, of course, is extremely interesting and brings a lot to it. But it's interesting that despite the fact that Usha herself was not raised Christian, she was one of the people who really encouraged me to go down this faith journey, rediscover my own faith. And of course, you know, she's there with me every Sunday in church. And what she said to me is that even though she herself is not a Christian, she felt like the act of converting, the act of thinking about what my faith required of me, the act of thinking about God and Jesus Christ and what are the demands of the Christian life, she said it made you a better person. And so she was very supportive of it, even though she herself didn't come from that faith tradition. And that's how we're raising our kids. And, you know, it's an interesting mixture. It's definitely dynamic to have a Hindu, a Catholic father, 2 Catholic kids, and 1 4-year-old girl who hasn't figured it out yet. But I wouldn't take it any other way, Jesse. I do think that, you know, God has plans for all of us. And I think that this is God's way of speaking to us and encouraging our kids to find Him through their own particular journey.
Well, I now know why you wrote this book when you did, because you have another child on the way, and you're not going to have any time for anything after that. Communion. Finding My Way Back to Faith, JD Vance. He can only hope it's going to sell as well as Hillbilly Elegy. Good luck, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jesse. Good to see you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.